Welcome to the Arizona Department of Education's video on inquiry in social studies classrooms. In today's video, we will be examining what is inquiry and briefly reviewing the key components of an inquiry. We will also examine how inquiry can be used in a social studies classroom, and last, give you ideas to create your own inquiries. To begin with, inquiry is all about investigation and argumentation. Inquiry is just one type of instructional method, combining a teacher's knowledge and expertise to engage students. It also can be incorporated into units in many different ways, either as long inquiries that last a few days to just an anticipatory set that lasts for part of a lesson. Using inquiry focuses on student-centered learning and engagement. It also provides opportunity for extended learning through civic engagement and service. What inquiry is not is a specific lesson plan or an entire unit plan. It also is not a cure-all for critical thinking. There are many ways to engage students to think critically, and inquiry is just one method. When using inquiries, you should include the following: compelling and supporting questions. It should also include content from primary and secondary sources. It should be skills-based and grade level appropriate. Inquiry should also include formative, summative, and additional performance tasks. And students should write and write often. This does not necessarily mean that full-length essays are required, but even ordering a list of causes of an event in answer to your compelling question is still writing. For inquiry-based learning, there are 4 major steps. These are, number 1, students developing questions as they research that they are interested in and then hungry to answer. This drives their passion, research, and analysis. 2, students use class time to research their inquiry. This gives them access to their greatest resource, you. And number 3, when students complete their research, it is important that they present what they have learned. This can be in a written essay, an oral presentation, a project of some sort, or any other derivative that demonstrates their results. And number 4, to finish strong, students should reflect on what worked and what didn't work as they progressed through the entire process. When you do a complete inquiry rather than just a piece of one, the process looks like this. The beginning, or phase 1, is framing the question. You will find the right content angle, one that's not too broad and not too narrow. Then craft a compelling question that engages the student and creates interest. Once you've narrowed the question, you will want to stress test that question to see if it works with multiple answers. The second phase of a full inquiry is the investigation. This is where students answer supporting questions that are more narrow than the compelling question and use primary sources to start to craft their arguments. This is done in stages using multiple supporting questions, formative assessments, primary and secondary sources, and additional questions that students may encounter as they research. The final phase of a full inquiry is finishing the argument. Referencing back to answer the compelling questions, students make connections using the documents to finalize their argument, and then extend that learning through actions. When creating an inquiry, whether it's a full inquiry or just a small little anticipatory set of an inquiry, it truly is all about the questions. In a full inquiry, you will have both compelling and supporting questions. Again, you don't necessarily need to do a full inquiry. Small investigations and questions fulfill many of our disciplinary skills and processes standards. Compelling questions set the stage for the inquiry. These questions will guide students in their thinking, but not give them the answers. There should be multiple ways to answer a compelling question. Compelling questions are also intellectually rigorous and enable the students to relate to the question, thus making it relevant to their lives. Lastly, compelling questions set up a summative argument. The goal of an inquiry is to have students think, investigate, and argue a point of view. A compelling question needs to do just that. Supporting questions support the compelling question. They perform the function of scaffolding a difficult or complex concept into easier chunks, enabling the student to develop their argument. These questions often help describe, define, and elaborate on processes, events, or people. You can think of inquiry questions like a tree. The compelling question is the tree, while the supporting questions are the roots of the tree. Some examples of compelling and supporting questions are, why was the Korean War forgotten is a compelling question, and a supporting question could be, how did the Korean conflict become a war? Another example of a compelling question could be, was the French Revolution successful? And a supporting question could be, what were the social, economic, and political problems in pre-revolutionary France? Another key component of using inquiry in the new social studies standards is the use of primary and secondary sources. Primary sources should spark curiosity and engagement, be relevant to the topic and the student. They can be images, videos, clips, personal narratives, etc. They should also contain the content knowledge and concepts students need to understand and be able to use. They can include interviews, letters, diaries, etc. Finally, these sources become the evidence used in the student's arguments. The ability to use primary and secondary sources effectively to make a cogent argument is key to the inquiry process. So what are primary and secondary sources exactly? Primary sources being any source that was created at the time of the person's life or event, whereas secondary sources are usually written after the fact and are a reflection on something that happened previously. There are a variety of items that can be primary and secondary sources that range from images, art, music, interviews, political cartoons, letters, artifacts, maps, charts, data sets, etc. They should be age and skill level appropriate, but also complex enough to challenge the student's thinking. As part of the new standards, multiple perspectives is a required standard, so primary and secondary sources you choose should offer a range of perspectives from all parties involved in an event or a movement. Now let's look at some key components of inquiries. These are both formative and summative tasks. Examples of a formative task could be defining a term, listing and ranking those items with reasonings, annotating sources, maps, and timelines, making original timelines, creating charts and graphs, small writing assignments, participation in debates and discussions, developing their initial claim to answer that compelling question, and using anything to make a counterclaim are just some of the options that you can checklist as formative tasks in an inquiry. Summative tasks are slightly different and should answer the compelling question in detail. These can include longer written assignments, dialogues, plays, scripts, tableaus, and Socratic seminars. They can be projects, multiple choice exams, infographics, benchmarks, and district exams. Keep in mind that formative tasks should not answer the compelling question completely, and summative tasks do not have to be a traditional multiple choice exam. The new history and social science standards have specific inquiry standards labeled as disciplinary skills and processes to use in your courses. For K-8, the disciplinary skills and processes standards are clearly explained at each grade level. However, for high school, the disciplinary skills and processes are not clearly defined for each course your district creates. It is up to your district to determine which disciplinary skills and processes should be included in each course. However, it is recommended that a course contain all or almost all of the disciplinary skills and processes standards to ensure that by the time students graduate high school, they will have mastered all of these standards. As you create your scope and sequence, you and your district will determine which standards should be taught in which courses. You can find these other standards with detailed content-specific history, civics, geography, and economic standards on the Arizona Department of Education's website for social studies. Now the question becomes how to use inquiry in a social studies course. Keep in mind that inquiries can be formal and last for a day or a few days as part of a larger unit plan. There are many resources out there that include full inquiries. Use all or some of them, whatever meets the needs of your students. On the ADE Social Studies Standards website, we have resource lists for K through 8 that will help you in implementing inquiry into your classrooms. And we also have included high school resource lists that are geared towards the different content areas. The key is to fill in inquiries as you can throughout your scope and sequence. Inquiry can also be something small, like a starter or anticipatory set to introduce a lesson. For example, use pictures that students can inquire as to the relationship of the images. A good example of this is Lincoln's Pockets from the Library of Congress. Select 5 to 6 images that happen to be in President Abraham Lincoln's pockets when he was assassinated, and have students inquire as to the relationship of the items and whom they belong to. Another example of a quick inquiry is an exit ticket. This is an easy, quick assignment that on a small piece of paper have students rank items from a previous lesson and then explain their rationale for their rankings. Even though this is small and quick, it still is inquiry, and they're having to back up what they ranked with evidence. Adding inquiry to examine a larger world around the students is another way to increase inquiry in your classroom. Have them relate content learned to a broader world and then relate that content to themselves specifically. Always asking the question of relationships. Again, simply adding open-ended questions will increase inquiry in your classroom. And last, add inquiry into your classroom by extending the learning past the student's scope. Have them engage locally in issues that deal with the content that they've learned. Have them ask questions and get involved. This civic engagement is so vital to their success as adult citizens, and it fulfills the inquiry standards that are now required. As inquiry becomes more integrated into social science curriculum, there are more and more free resources available each day. Go to the ADE Social Studies website and click on the list of resources for each grade level to see what is out there. Thank you for watching our video on using inquiry in the social studies classroom. For questions or concerns, please contact either Tammy Waller at tammy.waller@azed.gov or Linda Burrows at linda.burrows@azed.gov, or visit the Arizona Department of Education Social Studies Standards website. There we have lists of resources and ideas and tips that you can use to incorporate inquiry into your classrooms. Also, look for continuing professional development on using inquiry in your classrooms. Thank you.